I am going to turn it over to your Mistress of Ceremonies, Lee Reeves.
All of you, we wouldn't have a show without you. You could have stayed home. It's Memorial Day weekend. It's a beautiful day. You could have worked in your garden. You could have taken a hike, watched Netflix from your easy chair, but you can't leave now. But you made the effort to come out and hear stories your neighbors have to tell. Stories that break down barriers and bring us closer to each other. Stories that remind us of our shared humanity, and stories that help us make meaning of our lives. I believe every story that you'll hear today will have a kernel of meaning that you can relate to. So let's get going. Our first storyteller is Stephen again. He is going to pick up my pen. So anyway, let's welcome Stephen Kartstein onto the stage.
Okay. Well, I was excited. I was 7 years old and on my way to sleepover summer camp. For the first time in my life, I was going to be away from my mother and father, out of the house, away from my sister and brother, and on my own. And I was thrilled. I was absolutely thrilled. So as my parents drove me down the freeway towards Camp Yamicus, that feeling of excitement just kind of grew and grew and grew until I just about exploded out of the car when they came into the parking lot of Camp Yamicus. My parents checked me in. We said our goodbyes. They drove away home, and I was there. Now, I didn't think about this till later as to why I was getting the opportunity to go to summer camp, sleepover. I think it was for their benefit as well as mine. I know I was going to have a good time. So, but anyways, Camp Yamicus was all boys. And this was my first kind of experience with a kind of a mass socialization kind of thing. So, and definitely all boys was a little different too. But I grew up in a, fairly casual household, brother, sister, and all that stuff. But anyways, we did everything together at the camp. We slept together in bunk beds. There were 15 to 20 boys, along with a counselor, all age appropriate. I was 7, and there were 7, 8, 9-year-olds in the camp, in the cabin with us. We played volleyball together. I learned archery, and I didn't kill myself or anybody else. I'm proud of that. We went on nature hikes. Crafting, man, I made GIMP bracelets, if any of you know what those are. And I made them for the entire family. No one ever wore them. And I realized that my crafting skills were limited. But I was there. I was having a blast. I was on my own. I was an outdoorsman. So anyways, one day rolled into the next, and all of a sudden it's Thursday. And they told us at breakfast that we were going to be doing something special. Oh, crap, I forgot the bathrooms. Probably the strangest thing and the most impressionable to me was the bathrooms. Now, they were just open spaces, kind of like this room, with just rows of toilets, rows of sinks, urinals, showers were wide open. Nothing was private. So you went in there were, 50 or other people doing whatever it is they needed to do, and you did what you needed to do, and you got out. It was very impressive. I mean, you got to understand, the only naked man that I ever seen before was my father. So there was a variety of exposure, let's say. But anyways, So anyways, it's Thursday. We're at breakfast. They're telling us we're going to do something special that night. we're going to go out into the woods and we're going to sleep under the stars. And I was ecstatic about that opportunity. Here I am, the experienced outdoorsman now, and I couldn't think of anything better than sleeping under the stars. So we did. After dinner, we grabbed our sleeping bags, we marched into the woods. We came upon this kind of cleared area. It was surrounded by the forest, really thick forest where the lake was, and where Camp Yamicus was. And it was, heavy forest. And you could see this area had been used before. There were little spots where campfires were lit and things like that. And we kind of settled in. And we were still together in our cabin groups, and we settled in. We rolled out our sleeping bags. We didn't have any weenies or to roast, or we didn't make s'mores, but we had ghost stories. Oh yeah, ghost stories. Now, I had never really been exposed to ghost stories before, so here I am, and I was listening, and I learned about the Yamicus Terror. Ooh, everybody go, ooh. Okay, so the Yamicus Terror was a man who escaped the insane asylum, of course, and lived in the woods in a cabin that he built, and he made his living killing people, dragging them back to his cabin, cutting out their eyes, storing them on the shelves in his cabin, and living a happy life. That was until there was a struggle. And they were with one of his intended victims. And the struggle ignited a fire. And the fire spread and ignited some dynamite that was there. And the dynamite exploded, and the cabin went up smithereens. And all the eyes were scattered all over the forest. Now, the legend has it that no bodies were ever found. Okay, no bodies were ever found. And the legend is that the Yamicus Terror, he is still out there collecting eyes and looking for his missing eyes. I was impressed, to say the least, no doubt about it. And the story ended with a giant screaming, "May the eyes of Yamicus open!" Okay. Well, I have to tell you that every firefly and moth that hit the campfires, bing, for me, were the eyes of Yamicus opening. So my 7-year-old butt, we went to sleep, and everything was fine. Went to sleep, didn't have any problems getting a snooze. When all of a sudden, there was this screeching and hollering and yelling and bellowing, and from out of the woods around us poured men, and they were dressed as Indians, and they had feathers and war paint, and they were screeching and yelling and hollering, and they were running through us, and we were screeching and hollering and yelling, and they grabbed some of the older boys and ran back into the woods with them. And that was it for me. I wasn't going back to sleep. So I just kind of laid there in my sleeping bag, looking up at the stars, waiting for that next thing to happen, And nothing happened, but I couldn't sleep. So one of the counselors came by and, noticed that I wasn't asleep and asked me what was wrong. And I said, well, I'm kind of upset. I was scared. He goes, well, why don't you come over and sleep with us? And, so I rolled up my sleeping bag and walked over to where they were just a few feet away. It wasn't that big a deal. And I unrolled my sleeping bag, hopped in, and relaxed and went to sleep. I woke up because I heard some footsteps. And there were somebody crunching on the leaves and twigs around. And then I heard some breathing. It was getting closer and closer. And then I felt there was a hand that was pushing on the outside of my sleeping bag, as if it was feeling to see if somebody was actually inside the sleeping bag. And I'm lying there on my belly. I'm a belly sleeper, by the way. And my eyes were shut. I was clenched, holding my breath, hoping that this would go away, and it did. But it came back. And this time, when the hand returned to the sleeping bag, it was kind of scratching on the outside of the sleeping bag as if it was trying to tear a hole in the sleeping bag and reach in and get to me in my safe little cocoon there. And I didn't know what to do. I was just going out of my mind in the bag, and I just kind of laid there like this for, I can't remember how long. And then it ended, and it went away. He went away. And I woke up the next morning in my regular spot. I was, with the counselors, just like I was supposed to be. And I got out of my sleeping bag. I looked at my sleeping bag. I mean, there was no marks. There were no scratches. There were no tears in the sleeping bag. I went over to where the boys were that I was sleeping with or was supposed to be sleeping with. And we were all talking about the raid the night before. But nobody mentioned the visitation from anybody other than, the raid. I didn't say anything about it, and we kind of collected ourselves and walked back to camp. And at breakfast, there were a number of new junior counselors there. They were dressed in Indian garb with feathers and had war paint, and obviously there was an initiation that they had passed. Well, camp was coming to an end. The rest of Friday passed without incident. And Saturday, my parents came, my mom and dad came and picked me up from camp. And of course, they asked me how I liked it. And I kind of lied. I told them about the good stuff. I told them about the swimming and the boating and the archery and all that, but I never told them about the night out. I never told them about the ghost stories. I never said anything about the visitation or the raid, and we went home. But Camp Yamicus came home with me, and it came home in a horrible way. The nights were filled with terror for me. The dark held creatures that were out to get me. The closet doors had to be closed. The bed, I had to check under the bed to be sure there was nothing under the bed. To go to sleep, I had to have the covers up almost over my face, like I was in that protective cocoon of the sleeping bag, so that no one could get to me. The creaks of the house and the wind in the trees were him coming back to finish the job that he didn't do in Camp Yamicus. Now, I know I figured out later on that either my mind was playing tricks on me or I was being pranked by one of the counselors. Okay, and I'm going to go with the prank because the other one means that I'm a nutbag. And I realized that, it was one of those things that I couldn't explain, but I did grow out of it. It took time, but I did grow out of it. But there's a couple of things that I still don't do. One, I've never owned a sleeping bag, and I never go camping. Thank you.
So I asked each storyteller the same questions. The first one was, if you could change one thing about the world, what would it be? Stephen said, if I could, I would make education of the population equal across the globe. Who is someone you wish were still around? He said, my dad, my father, to finish rebuilding our relationship. If you could ask God, life, the angels, the powers that be, any question and receive a direct answer, what would that question be? Stephen's was, what makes you worthy? Stephen was the first marketing and program manager ever here at the Elks Performing Arts Center, which opened in 2016. He took the mission very seriously, and the mission was to provide a place for practice and education of the performing arts. And he grew the program from private weddings and events like that to some of the best jazz you'll ever hear in Arizona, to folk sessions, to comedy shows, all kinds of stuff. So we have an incredible asset here because of his work, and Liz has taken over and is doing the same kind of work. He's a good friend, a loyal person. You can absolutely count on him. And although you won't find him camping in the woods or glamping in the woods, you will find him puttering around his garden all summer. Now, I'd like to ask Cynthia Perpich up here, our next storyteller.
So what do you want for your birthday? The question kind of took me by surprise, especially because it was coming from my therapist. I knew that she wasn't going to get me anything because that would have been weird and unprofessional. But I knew what she was trying to do. She was trying to get me excited for my birthday. I was turning 26, and the previous year had had some painful memories around my birthday. So again, just trying to get me excited about my upcoming birthday. So she said, I want you to think of something really big, something you wouldn't even expect to get for your birthday. And I just thought, and I kind of blurted out, I want to swim with the dolphins. And I didn't know where that came from, because this was about 36 years ago, and it was long before dolphin swims became commercialized. It wasn't like you could go to SeaWorld and swim with the dolphins and do all that kind of stuff. I didn't know anyone who had done it. I didn't know anywhere you could do it. It was just something foreign to me. But my therapist was happy that I had come up with something, and so I felt, okay, I felt pretty happy about it too, and that was that. A few days later, I'm at work, and I tell my friend Jenna about the experience with my therapist. I worked in a trendy restaurant in Santa Monica, California. I had moved to LA to become a stand-up comedian. And the restaurant served not only as a place for me to make a living, all of us there were creatives. We were aspiring actors, singers, writers, dancers. And so it became a place of support and friendship. And so it was a very special place for me, having come to this new land where I didn't know anybody. So, LA. So the night of my birthday party, well, it wasn't really a birthday party. My friends took me out to dinner. And so after dinner, my friend Jenna sets this box down at the table. And I look at it, and it's wrapped, and it looks like a shoebox. And so I open it up. Ta-da! It's a shoebox. And on the outside of the shoebox, they're cut out from magazines, slogans from the Nike campaign, right? It was like, be brave, be fearless, you became important to yourself. So I opened up the shoebox, and inside it was painted blue like the ocean. There was a cardboard cutout of a woman swimming with my face pasted to it. And there were these two little wind-up toy dolphins, you know, the kind of little screws, and then you can put them in for bath toys. And it was so cute and adorable, and I was like, you guys, this is so sweet. And then I looked, and on the inside of the shoebox top was an envelope, and it was taped. And on the outside, it said, just do it. And I opened up the envelope, and there was $65 and a brochure for a place in Key Largo, Florida that did dolphin swims. My friend Jenna said, we all pitched in. We found this place. We don't know how you're going to get there. We don't know how you're going to do it, but we know that you are going to go swim with the dolphins. And the weird thing is I knew it too. I had absolute faith that I was going to swim with the dolphins. which was not my regular MO. My regular MO was anxiety, fear, plan it, figure it out. So for me to have complete faith was just a foreign concept, but I did. And so there was one obstacle facing me in this dolphin swim adventure was that I was broke. I was going to be 26. I'd used all my money to move up to LA. I had credit cards that were maxed out. I had no available credit. There was nothing of my own will or volition that was going to make this happen. So I had to have faith. So I waited. And I waited. And then a few weeks later, I overheard a hostess at work saying that she had got free round-trip tickets to go back home for the holidays. So I said, how? She said, well, I just did some work for a travel agent. I just had to go and take these promotional packages to all these travel agencies in LA and check them off the list, and then I got free round-trip tickets. I said, oh, do they need anybody else? She said, I think there's one more spot available. She gave me the number. So one phone call, a few days spent navigating LA traffic, and I had tickets to Key Largo, Florida. So now I had the tickets, I had the motivation and the desire, I put in some extra shifts, and I got enough money to pay for the hotel. My dad, learning of this, said, okay, I'll pay for your rental car. So now at this point, everything is paid for. I even have a little bit of extra money for another session, a dolphin swim. So now it's time to meet some dolphins. So this place that my friends had found was in Key Largo, Florida, and it was a place where there were dolphin swims, but they also prided themselves on doing research as well for the dolphins. So when they said, you have this dolphin swim, there's no guarantee of interaction. There's a confined place where you can swim, you snorkel with them in the water, but they also have an opportunity to go out of the confined area and swim away from you because they didn't want the dolphins to be stressed. So it was like, okay. So before the first swim, we go and we get a little Dolphin 101. We learn about the dolphins. We learn about the echolocation, how they communicate with each other, about how the pops and the pings and the whistles that they use to communicate and that you'll hear when you're swimming with them underwater. We also learned that they're naturally curious and that if you hum or you sing underwater, that they'll be drawn to you and that they'll come to you just because they're so curious and playful. We also learned that they're very playful and that part of their play can sometimes, well, can be sexual. That for a dolphin, play is play, right? A good time is a good time. So they said, you know, if you put a dolphin up like this and you put a human up like this, the dolphin's erogenous zones would correspond to the knees of a human. And so they told us about some behaviors where the female dolphins would, if you were snorkeling and swimming, they would go over the back of your knees just really gently, or they might go underneath them and flip them up with their little tail fins. The male dolphins would swim with an erect penis and then hook you behind the knees and then roll you over in the water. Armed with this information, I go in for my first swim. Now, there were about 6 people in the first swim. There was a family with some kids, and there was another woman. And it was really cool because just to hear the echolocation, just to hear them. And I remember seeing the sunlight in the water, but they were just kind of peripheral. They were not, they didn't seem like they really wanted to hang out. I think a lot of them just kind of went into the other pen. And I thought, okay, well, maybe that's it. Maybe that is my experience, kind of seeing them that way and hearing them. So the session was over. There's facilitators say, well, you have one more swim. It's just going to be you and this other woman. And we're going to feed them lunch. They're going to be much more relaxed. And I thought, okay. And then I did ask one question. And I was like, that first swim, did you see any male dolphins? She was like, no. I'm like, okay, they're all female. Great. Next time. I don't have to be worried about I don't have to be worried about that. So now it's time for the second swim. We get in the water, and it's just me and this other woman. And this other woman and a dolphin immediately bond. The dolphin offers the woman its dorsal fin, which apparently is like the ultimate sign of trust with the dolphin, right? So they bond, they're swimming, and I'm by myself, and I'm humming and snorkeling, feeling rejected by dolphins, you know. And then all of a sudden, it's like 3 dolphins just come racing towards me. And so I freak out, you know, and I'm like, ah, and I'm above the water, and the facilitator's like, calm down, you're gonna lose their trust. And I'm like, now I'm freaking out that I've lost their trust. I'm like, so I'm snorkeling, and then it was like I had 3 dolphin besties. We're swimming. I was snorkeling at one point, and I did all of a sudden feel like the smooth belly of a dolphin just gliding over the back of my legs and swimming around. And then I was doing more little snorkeling around, and one came up beneath my knees and like flipped them up. There was a point where I was snorkeling, and I could, you know, the thing is, they would be far away, and the echolocation would get louder and louder and louder, you know, so like bing, 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 and you knew they were getting closer. And I turned my head, and there was just one dolphin just gliding past, just really close to me. And I remember it looked at me, and I looked at him. I don't think it was him. And it was magical. The facilitators gave me a hula hoop, and I had a little hula hoop in there, and the dolphins were swimming through the hula hoop. And it was just, like I said, it was magical. The whole thing was magical. It started with a birthday wish, and it grew from just a gift of just complete love and friendship, and then it just manifested with faith. And so I'm thinking about that dolphin story because this Saturday is my birthday. And so I'm thinking that I'm turning 60, so it's got to be a pretty big wish. Do you guys want to know what I'm going to wish for? I'm not going to tell you. You're going to have to come back for another storytelling session, and I'll tell you about that wish coming true, too. Thank you.
So, Cynthia. Wonderful. The one thing she would change about the world, more empathy. And the one person, her dad. We have a dad theme going tonight. And because he made this possible. He is one of the people that made this possible. And her question to the gods would be, is this just an experiment that's gone wrong? So Cynthia is a TV writer, producer, or she was a TV writer, producer, and she used to write for a dating game show. She also, as you know, used to be a stand-up comedian. And here in Prescott, she created the Mile High Comedy Theater and ran it for 3 years. She was the digital media teacher for 17 years, a digital media teacher in, is it Prescott Schools? Bradshaw Mountain High School for 17 years. And she continues to work in the field of career and technical education. Let's give it up for Cynthia. And now it's my pleasure to invite Dan Riordan onto the stage.
Well, back in my day, I also fancied myself to be a rather adventurous outdoorsman. I was an avid backpacker, whitewater kayaker, rafter, backcountry telemark skier. Rode the length of the Grand Canyon with my 14-year-old daughter as my bowman. To give you an idea of the intensity and the attitudes at the time, one year, 3 of us skied from Jacobs Lake across the Kaibab Plateau to the north rim of the Grand Canyon in February. It's 58 miles, over 9,000 feet. We took turns pulling a 200-pound sled. Took us 3 days and 2 nights, and we were snow camping at 22 below zero. It's a trip to keep water liquid, to say the least. I need to bring this up a little bit. Here you go. I've lost my place.
You were snow camping.
There we go. So, unknown to my companions, before we left, I had made a banner up from some butcher paper, and I rolled it up, put it in a tube, and stashed it in the gear. Now, when we got to the North Rim, I put that banner up and tethered it between 2 ski poles. And I told the guys, hey, here's the plan. Come on over here. I said, we all face out to the canyon. We drop our pants, we drop our shorts, we get on our hands and knees under the banner, and we moon the camera for a selfie. So the camera goes off, and we've got our picture. The banner reads, "This rim shot's for you." Rims over the rim. So you get an idea of what you're dealing with here. Well, even this wasn't enough. I guess sort of an extreme sports junkie looking for the next rush. Thus was born the next adventure, decided, was the unknown. We'd done all this other stuff, the unknown. So, the Hippie Exploration Company was formed. Now, my buddy John, he's about 5'4", tough as nails, and agile as a monkey. And we've been doing some hiking for years. And then along came Dave. Dave was a letter carrier out in California, and he had transferred to the Prescott post office, where I was a letter carrier. Dave and I could have been twin brothers. People on the street confused us all the time. Now, Dave was the coastal west moving to the mountain west. So he was rather excited about learning about his new environment. But he didn't know backpacking and such. He was a for real surfer. So John and I said, come on. Our first hike, Dave shows up. And he's got black bullhide leather leggings on with buckles. And he's packing a pistol loaded with snake shot. Because what Dave does know is there's rattlesnakes in Arizona, and he's not taking any chances. John and I are cracking up. We're like, oh my God, you are the point man for this hike, no doubt. You're out there, buddy. You go. So, one of our favorite playgrounds is Sycamore Canyon Wilderness area, out here in our backyard. And we had a real love affair with it. There's a special place in Sycamore Canyon called Taylor Cabin. It's a rock stone masonry, little cowboy's lion cabin built into a cliffside. Mystical, almost magical, because Taylor, you could walk in there naked, starving and cold, and walk out fully clothed and fed. People brought gifts to the cabin. Horse packers would leave off provisions they didn't need or didn't want to pack out. Occasional backpackers the same. We always took gifts to the cabin. And if you're lucky, you'd find a pint of whiskey on the mantle, and we left a few. Well, the problem was we had a short window at one time, and we were anxious because this was our Cadillac backpack to go to the cabin. Oh, my God. But it was a long drive to the trailhead and an 8-9 mile hike in. So the Hippie Exploration Company comes up with this grand plan. We're going to go out to Sycamore Point, about midpoint along the canyon there, and we're going to descend off the point into the canyon. I mean, after all, it's only 300 or 400 yards straight down. You know, like, what were we thinking? Of course we weren't. So from there, it's 2 miles to Taylor Cabin. Well, Coming out, we're going to use Tule Canyon, a side canyon off of Sycamore Point, to exit a canyon we'd always wanted to explore because we had found an old map that showed an Indian ruin up in there, and newer maps did not have it. So it's like, oh, right, win-win. This will be great. We make our descent. We get to the bottom of the bluff, and much to our surprise and chagrin, we are walled in with 30 yards of shrub live oak. Now, for those of you who don't know it, shrub live oak is nature's own concertina wire. You're not bushwhacking through that stuff at all. So, once again, we're confronted with another recurring reality, that what we lacked in foresight and planning, we tended to make up with testosterone. The good news is there was no shortage. The bad news is when you're operating from that platform, things rarely turn out well. So, we're roaming along the base there, looking around, and we find a game tunnel where animals have been going in and out and through. It's only 2.5, 3 feet wide. And we have no choice because we can't go back up, and we have to get into the main canyon. So here we are, short pants, short sleeve shirts, low crawling in this tunnel. And you go 3 or 4 feet, and you drag your pack behind you, and you go 3 or 4 more feet, and you drag your pack behind you, and you keep going. By the time we get to the main canyon, the 3 of us look like we've been trying to stuff a bobcat in a sack. Pretty gnarly, not to mention the tufts of hair left hanging off the branches behind us. So, that evening, we decide that discretion is the better point of valor, and perhaps a change of plan is in order. So rather than going on to pushing on to Taylor Cabin, we decided we better start trying to figure out how to hustle our butts out of Tule Canyon because we've just been handed a lesson in the unknown, and we don't know what's up Tule Canyon. Well, that night around the fire, John, who is a teller of tall tales and a maestro of bullshit. I mean, this guy made us laugh a lot. He was one of those characters that, were it not for bullshit, he wouldn't have much of anything to say a lot of the time. And you got to know we loved it. So that night around the campfire, he's regaling us with a story of his outdoors adventure in Vermont, where he grew up as a young man. And the story went that one late afternoon, towards twilight, he leapt out of the low branch of a tree onto a deer and rode it to the ground, stabbing it and cutting on it with his buck knife. Dave and I are in tears. I mean, it just doesn't get much better. I mean, that's a hell of a story. So the next morning we get up and we start out. And about 20 minutes out, we come to a narrows in a canyon. It must be 100 feet tall with beautiful fluted sandstone walls carved by wind and water. But going through the center of it is a trail of blood. And I don't mean spots. I mean like somebody took a gallon can and whew, something was bleeding out big time. It was fresh, bright red. So John, if you recall, the Tarzan deer slayer, he gets all excited. Take your packs off. Take your packs. Somebody shot a deer up top. It came down. We're going to go find us a deer. There's a wounded deer. We're going to pack us out some venison. And Dave and I are like, no, we're not. I mean, for Christ's sakes, we're sticking to the new plan. We've already been handed some lessons here. Pay attention, John. And I don't want to pack out a bloody deer carcass. I'm not set up for that either. So he's all grumbling, oh, you guys are no fun, no adventure here. And we start up the canyon. Well, about 4 or 5 hours up the canyon, we're starting to go, you know what? We're not going to get out of here today. And compounding that is the fact that in the last 2 hours, we had not seen a spot you could roll out one sleeping bag, much less 3. It was so narrow and so overgrown and so crowded, and we thought, oh man, here we go again. So we push on a couple more hours. It's starting to get late, and we get our big break. Here's this talus slope, a rock slide, opening on the side of the canyon, and we look up, and there's a chimney stone, must be 60, 70 feet tall, cleaved off the side of the canyon, and you can see it's about 3 or 4 feet wide, and you can see light through it. And we're thinking, God, if we could get up to that chimney rock, we could probably inchworm our way up to the top. So we start up that talus slope, and I don't know if you're familiar, but a rocky, loose slope like that, you're 20, 30 feet up, and you slide 10 feet back. 20, 30 feet up, and you slide 10 feet back with a heavy pack. So it's a process. It's a process. We get up there. We made it. So, okay, John, monkey man, you're up. Take a rope. You get up to the top. You pull our packs up. Dave and I will follow. So John starts up. And just as he's topping out, we hear a voice that says, "Hey, you made it out!" I mean, we are in legitimate wilderness. I mean, we're miles from an unmaintained dirt road. We're like, what in the hell? So Dave and I, we inchworm our way up. We send our packs up, and we climb up. We get to the top. And here's this old duffer standing there in a bright orange sweatshirt with a rifle on his shoulder. And he's got a young lady with him. It turns out to be his daughter. And he goes, "Boy, that's a hell of a climb, you guys. Surprised you got out of there." And we were like, yeah, our plans kind of changed. We were a little surprised, too. We said, our truck's out at the point, probably about 4 miles away. He said, "Could you give us a ride maybe back to our truck there?" And sure, no problem. "Oh, by the way, you didn't happen to see a wounded bear down there, did you?" I looked at Dave, and I said, "Dave, what the hell would you have done if we'd gone looking for a wounded deer and came upon a wounded bear?" Without hesitation, "Oh, no problem. I was going to toss John my knife and say, 'Ride him, he's all yours.'" So once again, the universe reminded us that when we weren't looking for trouble, trouble was looking for us.
Dan Riordan. If he could change one thing about the world, got a theme going here: more empathy, compassion, understanding. Someone Dan wishes was still around is his wife, Sandy, who he spent 49 years with. He would ask the gods, the angels, his question would be, why not me? Now, Dan was a mail carrier for 30 years, 26 of them here in Prescott. So he probably delivered mail to some of your houses. He's a consummate craftsman, woodworker, jewelry maker, weaver. He creates all kinds of eclectic art. He has a Zen garden in front of his house with bronze art made by Dan, and a little free library, not made by you. Well, anyway, it's cool. Okay, and he's a big supporter of local artists. A little free library box in front of his house, at the sidewalk, a poetry box, which he changes regularly, and a little menagerie of tiny animal figures on the ground. They're playing. I mean, it's like an invitation for any child to come along and play. And I know all this because Dan lives across the street and a few doors down from me. Now I'm going to put my hand in here. Sue Halvorsen.
Well, talk about stepping into the unknown. I wasn't going to come today. I live over in the Verde Valley, outside of Sedona in Cornville, but I kept getting this nudge. God said, "No, I want you to go tonight." Now, as it be, I actually was a storyteller here. You guys probably don't remember. Inaugural night. I was the very first speaker because the guy that was supposed to open it was late. And so, and so I was the first speaker. And I haven't been back since, just because I live so far away and it hasn't worked out. But here I am. So stepping into the unknown. My story is going to be, one time, many years ago, I was at a crossroads. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was at a crossroads of what to do with my future. And someone said, pray to God. Ask him what to do. All right. So I showed my resume to God. I said, look, all these things I can do. Which one do you want me to do? He said, I want you to write a book. I'm like, write a book? That's not in the top 50 things I know how to do. I'm like, oh, it must be an anomaly. No. I kept hearing, I want you to write a book. I said, write a book about what? He said, it's time to tell your story, your testimony. It's like, oh, okay. So I kind of started writing. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't go to school to be a writer. But I just started, he got me this far. I'm just going to take out a piece of paper and a pencil, and I just started writing. And 200 pages later, I had a story. Now, of course, I had no idea what I was doing, if it was good, bad, or anything. But I was nervous. I thought, man, people are going to think I'm crazy, I'm weird. I didn't want to show nobody. So I kind of got fearful. I said, I know, I'll ask him for something else I can do. Yeah, that's what I'll do. So I said, give me plan B. I want plan B. So he said, okay. He goes, you're going to speak in front of thousands of people. I'm like, oh, no way, not me, no. I'll keep the first one, thank you. I said, I know, I'm not going to tell anybody he told me to do this. That's how I'll keep it a secret, and I won't have to speak in front of anybody. I just won't tell anybody. So the next morning, I get ready and I go to church. And we have a guest speaker. And he was the kind of preacher who just walks up and down the aisles. He doesn't stand up at a pulpit. He just walked up and down the aisles. And I was actually holding my manuscript because I had a few people there that were kind of being readers for me. But I was nervous. I said, man, they're going to think I'm crazy. They're going to think I'm nuts. And he's walking down the aisle, right? And he stops. I was sitting on the end. He stops right by me. He turns. He looks at me. And he goes, you're not crazy. They're not going to think you're stupid. I'm like, wow. You know what I mean? I was like blown away, right? So I'm just going, wow. And he keeps continuing like it was nothing, right? Continues on. I'm thinking, whoa. So that kind of rattled me a little bit. He didn't know me. I didn't know this guy. And so he's walking, and he's doing it again. He comes up by me. He stops, looks at me. He said, I want you to come up front. I'm like, what? Now, I was crazy. I sat in the back because, I'm shy. I sit in the back seat. I didn't want to be exposed at the front people. So they take me up front, right? And he starts prophesying over me, right? He starts saying this, saying that stuff. And then all of a sudden he stops. And he goes, did God tell you were going to speak in front of thousands of people? So he just announces it to the entire congregation that I'm going to speak in front of thousands of people, right? I'm just like, maybe. I wasn't going to admit it, And so, he goes on this thing, and what are you going to do, right? I didn't think anything. I just go home, okay? I'm thinking, all right, okay. So I'm thinking, oh, my God, okay, maybe God really wants me to speak, but I don't have anything in public speaking. I'm not even a writer, right? He's got me doing all these things. I have no idea. So to make a long story short, I started taking little college classes, those speech classes. Thought, well, maybe I'd get warmed up, learn how to do this kind of stuff. Started taking a couple of writing classes, even though I'd written a book, I started taking some classes. And then my husband and I were at an Amway convention. We'd won this big award, okay? There was 5,000 people in the stands. And, you go get your little trophy or whatever. So I thought, no problem. They said, you guys are going to get to speak for, I don't know, a minute, And I'm thinking, oh, my God. And we're dressed to the hell. I was in a formal, all that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, what am I going to say? A minute. It seems like eternity, right? So he's walking. And I remember getting up there. I just said something like, I took like 30 seconds. I said, what I like to do is I like to find the nugget in somebody, their passion, their goal. I said, I pull it out, and what they think is a chunk of coal is really a diamond in the rough, and I encourage them to go for it. That was it. That was my, 15-second speech. So I'm getting off stage, and I'm excited because I've done what the man of God says. I've spoken to thousands of people, and I never have to do it again. Right? So anyhow, I get off stage, and we're walking, and all of a sudden, these people that are high up come up to us. They liked that speech, that 30-second speech, so much. My husband and I got invited to do a paid speaking engagement where we were the main speakers. So you never know what the unknown's going to lead you to.
Scott Fitterer?
Hello, my name's Scott. I got a little bit of peer pressured into this, but it's not a bad thing. I had a great opportunity coming out of college to do a gap year program called Up With People. So the clientele who actually knows it, when I talk to students now, they're like, what? A little bit older. And I had known that I'd wanted to do this since they came to Chino and talked about it at Tasty Freeze or Chino Valley High School. And so the unexpected and unknown is also about host families or being hosted. Having done both, they're wild. My trip happened to go through Denver, Colorado, Chino Valley, actually, my hometown, and then down into Mexico and over to Europe, more Sweden, Finland, Germany, Denmark. There were 2 times that were just kind of standing out to me. I got to spend 25 days in Denmark with a specific host family learning more. That was awesome. But then also the time in Mexico, because a lot of people I think have been to Mexico like the border Mexico. And that's completely different than Mexico City, Veracruz. And because of when I went, I had just graduated college. I was on the older side of my cast. Everybody from 18 years old all the way up to a few people closer to 30. And being male, I got selected sometimes for some very interesting host families. One of which I was with another castmate, and we're in Mexico, and the joke was, well, how do you know if the tacos are fresh? Well, the dog's still barking. That was my host brother, off the top. From my host brother in country. That was a good joke. We all laughed. We knew it wasn't right or accurate. But we ended up in Veracruz, New Mexico, right on the coast. And it was a very interesting thing. I was selected, again, to be hosted with just one other gentleman. My Spanish is about as good as what you know you don't want to be called in Spanish, and that's about the extent of it. His English was maybe a little bit better, so we kind of communicated, I think. And mode of transportation during this time was on the back of a motorcycle. And if you haven't driven in Mexico recently, well, it's entertaining. So I get to hold on, and I also got the awesome helmet that looks like Lord Vader, so it flares out. So that's fun. Montezuma's Revenge visited me. That was fun. And then also just the trips of different things. We had to take a day walker to his grandma or something, so I'm holding on to the thing. Dogs start chasing. But talk about unknown. That's what it's about. If you ever have the chance to host, highly recommend it. Done it from other Up With People students way back when. Done it for other students talking about agriculture education. But this also kind of comes full circle because here in about a month or so, I get to go to another unknown, a missions trip to Cambodia. I have no idea what's going to come. So hosting and that little bit, thank you.
We'll do one more. Gary Delanoy? Gary. Is Gary here? Come on. Oh, you didn't want to tell. Okay, you were just filling. Okay.
I didn't realize that's what I was doing. I'll give you a quick one. Well, grew up in the suburbs of New York City, full-blown hippie. Got to see Hendrix, Joplin, everybody that was worth seeing back in the day, and I was a reckless son of a bitch. But I will tell you this, the best thing that ever happened to me was finding this little town right here. Changed my life. My uncle, who's like a brother to me, owned a camera store here in the late 70s. I needed a change. I'd been tripping, you name it. I've been doing everything under the sun. Came out here, my life completely changed. Best thing I ever did, and I love this place, and I love you people.
Beely. Beely? S? Oh, is that an L? Yeah.
Wow, this is crazy. I knew I was going to get up here. So I moved to the U.S. when I was about 9.5 years old. I didn't know a word of English, if you can believe it or not. So that is my unknown. I decided at a very early age that I wanted to explore everything that America had to offer. And when you're in the 5th grade, that means play all sports. So I did basketball, softball, you name it, track, high jump, all the great things. And what was amazing is, as I was doing them, I was learning more and more about the culture. And I don't think that you are anything without support of others. I had the best teachers that I could have hoped for. My 5th grade teacher, Mr. Gowdy, he basically labeled every object in the classroom for me. That's how I learned English, was through support. 6th grade, Mr. Locke just was the most supportive human being there was. He let me use his computer to send emails to my family in Sweden just to see how they were doing. I didn't have a lot of friends in the 6th grade because people didn't know how to talk to me. So he would spend some time to get to know me and encourage me and support me. And most importantly, my aunt, Aunt Shaheen, we moved in with her for 6 months in Fresno, California. I don't know if you're familiar with Fresno. It is very quiet, and I lived in Tehran, Iran, so it's like going from Manhattan to a very quiet city and getting a culture shock. But she was amazing. She was amazing in the way that we could walk into Costco and she could negotiate her price in any form of objects that she wanted. She was this 4'4" real estate agent with her doctorate, not afraid to tell you what she thinks about life. And because of her, and because of the encouragement that she gave me, I not only know English, I have my doctorate, I have my MBA, and I celebrate her. Last year she passed away, and today's her birthday. So, thank you.
It's now my pleasure to bring up to the stage Tim Magill.
Pretty good. My wife always tells me I should take these out of my mouth. Tommy was a 14-year-old overweight kid that kind of disheveled. He had a marginal interest in personal hygiene. Kind of wore oversized T-shirts to hide the fact that he was a little bit overweight. Typically would have a mustard stain from yesterday's hot dog, that kind of stuff. Had disheveled kind of a mop of hair. And unfortunately, back home at school, he was mercilessly bullied. He was picked on all the time. So I think his parents sent him to the summer camp that my wife and I were running about 20 years ago. And with the thought that maybe he'd build some resilience, he would make some friends. But as far as Tommy was concerned, going to a sleepaway camp meant being potentially with new tormentors for 24/7. So this was definitely a daunting step into the unknown for Tommy. Sophia also went to our summer camp. She was a 16-year-old beauty with curves in all the right places. She was definitely a part of the cool kid crowd and was very worldly beyond her age. Those two worlds didn't mix together with Sophia or Tommy. But our summer camp was kind of an unusual one. My wife and I worked at a number of different camps and outdoor centers, but this particular one had kids from all over the country, and indeed even all over the world. It's kind of a mixing pot. And the cool thing about this particular camp, we'd have trust fund babies down to kids that literally were coming to us on scholarship from homeless shelters. So it was an amazing mixing pot. A good summer camp is a place, unlike Stevens, a good summer camp is a place where kids can get away from that kind of oppression. They can't, I got to tell you, if you look at what Tommy had to deal with in terms of his bullying, Sophia had her own burden because she had to say all the right things. She had to be, as part of the cool kid crowd, she had to have all the right snarky comments to any adult kind of authority figure. She had to wear the right clothes. She had to have the right makeup. And this was, bluntly, for her, exhausting. So here you got two kids, and a good summer camp, as I say, is a place where some of that can go away. Kids don't have to have the oppression of either a bully or the oppression, really, of having to be a cool kid all the time and say all the right things and know how to put down the uncool kids the right way. A good summer camp is a place where a kid can actually reinvent themselves in a very brief period of time. And Tommy longed for that. He wanted to reinvent himself. So we celebrated his success at camp. It was pretty amazing. He learned how to shoot archery and actually excelled at horsemanship and really started even getting some respect from some of the older kids. This particular summer camp, we actually, believe it or not, used to teach rough stock, so bull riding. And Tommy learned how to bull ride, and that gave him some definite respect with some of the cool kids. So he started walking a little taller. He started making some friends, and he actually even took a shower every once in a while. And learned how to clean up his act literally as well as figuratively. But still, they were in separate worlds, right? I mean, even though Sophia and Tommy were in a lot of the same activities throughout the day, they really didn't mix that much. I mean, they definitely have different worlds. So dinner time, we'd have dinner. All the kids would come back after the day's activities, and it was a big hall, about twice the size of this. It was a big cavernous dining hall. And at the end of dinner, we'd always have announcements, and I'd get up and get on a microphone and talk about whatever the next day's activities were going to be. Pool's going to be open from 10 to 2, whatever. At the end of dinner every night before the kids got dismissed, there'd be kind of a lull, a little quiet period while the kids were cleaning up, and it'd get really kind of quiet. It was kind of amazing. Up jumps Tommy on his chair in the dining hall. He pulls away from the table and jumps up on the chair. And Sophia's at the other end of the, Sophia is so out of his league. But he stands up and he points and he says, "Sophia, will you go to the dance with me on Friday?" Silence hits this cavernous space with 200 kids that you could have heard a pin drop. And I, as the camp director, watching this tragedy unfold in front of us, right? I'm thinking to myself, have I built this kid up too much? Have we celebrated his successes too much? This is going to now turn into therapy for this child for the rest of his life. And while I'm trying to figure out how to stop this tragedy from unfolding, Sophia quietly scooches her chair back, stands up, and looks across the cavernous space and says, "Tommy, I'll go to the dance with you." silence is still enveloping the space. A kid is sitting, I'm standing there at the microphone, and there's a kid right in front of me, and he goes, "No way." It's still this pregnant silence for a minute, and we're all just kind of looking at each other, and then all of a sudden, cheers erupt through this cavernous space. All the kids are cheering, and Tommy is still standing on his chair, pumping the air with his fists, saying, "Yes." Well, Sophia was good to her word. It was amazing. She walked arm in arm with him to the dance on Friday night. She danced with him all of the dances. On the breaks, they'd, go over for punch and cookies, and she hung out, and they looked like they were old friends, yucking it up. Tommy had a shit-eating grin on his face. But the cool thing was, Sophia, the more endearing thing was, she was smiling the whole time as well. Now, folks, this is not a fairy tale. The next day, they went back to their separate worlds. The cool thing was, though, for the rest of the summer, anytime Sophia saw Tommy across the way, she would wave, and she would sing out, "Hey, Tommy," in acknowledgement of their shared history. Tommy would kind of wait for it, and then when it happened, he'd get a grin and he would wave back. But it was only after he knew it was safe to do that. And she would do that even though she was walking with the cool kids. So here's the deal. A good summer camp is a place where a kid with a marginal interest in personal hygiene can build the confidence to ask a pretty girl out to a dance. And even better, a pretty girl can have the audacity to say yes. Thank you.
Tim tells the best stories. He really does. Tim Magill, if he could change one thing in the world, he said, it might seem like a cliche, but more kindness. But can kindness ever be a cliche? Who does someone he wishes was still around? My dad. He was calm, confident, and a kind anchor in my life. Now that he's gone, I'm adrift. When questioned about what he'd ask the gods, if he could ask them any question, he said, well, if I'd have known you were going to ask something like that, I would have scheduled the call later in the day and had a drink in my hand. Okay, God, I get that we have free will, but why is there so much suffering in the world? Tim has invested much of his adult career in the outdoor education field, leading nonprofits that offer trauma recovery, outdoor adventure camps for impoverished and abused kids, foster families, women survivors of human trafficking, as well as veterans recovering from PTSD. He's held certificates in equine-assisted therapy, overnight horseback wilderness guiding, swiftwater rescue, as well as a high ropes course and zip line management. I mean, this guy's a lot of fun. He's now settled into a more sedate role as the financial businessman for Charlotte Hall Museum. What a lot of people don't know about Tim is he has a hobby, writing short stories. Now for our last storyteller of the night, I'd like to invite Michelle Hamblin up to the mic.
Alcoholism. Stole the best parts of my father's qualities to be the best parent he could be for me, let alone himself as a human. So my father, you know, when I was born, he was 49. My parents were much older than I. And by the way, I was born in 1965. We're celebrating some birthdays this week. Yes! I'm going to be 60 on Wednesday. Long time. So my father was, he was a veteran of the World War II. He was a city bus driver of the city transit in Rochester, New York. And yes, he was an alcoholic. So growing up as a kid in this very dysfunctional home, I had two very older parents. My mom was 43 when she had me, and of course my dad. And I learned a few things. Don't talk. What would the neighbors think? Don't feel, because someone might just shoot you down. What are you feeling like that for? Or you might think you're crazy. You're not feeling that. Certainly, don't share your feelings. Don't share your desires, your wishes, your hopes, because someone's going to say something like, "What do you think? Money grows on trees? Who do you think you are? You'll never amount to anything." Well, after 20 years of that, I think it was about time to move out. I had had enough of the belittlement. I had enough of the dysfunction in my household because of alcoholism. So I moved into my cousin's house, and they were Italian. All Italians back then had nice finished basements and grass in their garage, because that's where we would have big Italian family dinners, so on and so forth. Then you needed more room for baked good cooking. Anyway, I seem to have gotten off track. Anyway, so, just growing up there, I just didn't feel like I could imagine anything for myself. So, moved out on a boring evening, late winter. A friend and I decided to go, let's go take Jack, get some comfort, go for a drive, go by Lake Ontario, because that was my best place. I loved Lake Ontario. Lake Ontario, I felt like I could do anything. I felt free, and I was free. It was big and vast, even though it was only a lake. On a clear day, you could see Canada. Anyway, and we decided to continue our drive down a road that was like a zig and a zag and a zig and a zag. Now, mind you, Jack and Southern Comfort's sloshing around, zigging and zagging as well. And it's a late night. We get out there and we get to the other side of this road, from the lake to the other side. My driving ability and performance was doing much. It was just like, I can't explain it. It was like my body with all the alcohol going, and we were legally drinking, by the way. I was not of age. The car was just like drifting and going to the left and going to the right, and then finally making a left-hand turn. When you make a left-hand turn, you cut the corner, you start driving like London people. They drive on the left side of the road. Well, I got celebrated with blue and red lights for my performance of that turn. Anyway, my friend, obviously, we're like, okay, we've got all this flooding emotions and alcohol mushing around and everything, and I'm like, okay, I get all tweaky because I'm like, oh my God, I'm in trouble. Pull over the car. My friend said, see ya. She walks home. She's going down the street because that's where she lives. So I'm left in the car. Not one, not two, but 3 cop cars eventually pull up to me. And I'm 20. I don't know. Anyway, I was just very overwhelmed. Yeah. Okay. Oh, by the way, this is what you did before. Or you want to go. Anyway. You know why I pulled you over? No. Well, back a few minutes ago, you were doing some unsafe lane changing. Oh, okay. Because you've been drinking? I'm like, now here we go. There's the question. Felt like an hour for me to answer it. It was in my head. I'm like, okay, do I tell him I was drinking? No. What do I do? I don't know. A little? I was drinking a lot. Yeah, I drank a little. Okay, ma'am. Step out of the car, please. Now I'm shaking like I am right now because I'm standing in front of all of you. Anyway, he said, we're going to have to arrest you for driving under the influence. They had enough. They had enough. So the next thing I know, I'm getting handcuffed and I'm hearing my rights being read, but this is what I heard. And they sat me in the back of the police car. Totally forgetting what my rights were because I didn't really hear them, nor did I understand them at 20, I started to profess my guilt by crying hysterically in the back car. I know I was wrong. I could have hurt somebody and myself. I mean, I just went on and on and on. Finally, they got to do their thing. Go down to the police station. They do their police stuff. Okay. I was in a holding cell, I was out of holding cell, they did their little tests and everything, and of course, they said, oh, by the way, you were illegally drinking, we have to send a letter home to your parents. I don't know why, I don't know what the letter was. And then he asks me, this is late night, he goes, do you have someone you want to call? I'm like, another one of those hour-long conversations in my head. I'm like, oh my, it's late, who am I going to call? I don't know. You would think you would know somebody to call, right? Maybe my parents, maybe my dad, maybe somebody. Would you take me home? So the police took me home. All I could think about the next day was the letter. I don't know what I was going to do with it, but how am I going to get it? I don't live at home anymore. How am I going to get their mail? I've watched a few detective shows a lot. Columbo, Starsky and Hutch. All of that. I was going to say MacGyver. he's how you get out of things. Anyway, I decided to go to the post office. I'll stop my parents' mail. Tell them they're on vacation, right? It's a great idea. A lot of mail carriers in here, by the way. Back in the day, the mail carrier, you knew his name. And he knew whether you were home or not, or you were on vacation or not, so on and so forth. So I put the notice in, wait a few days, go in to check it. Sorry, ma'am, there's no notice being held. Like, what do you mean? I'm not going to fight with the post office. So the next thought was, all right, let's go find Al. Al the mailman. I find Al. Because I know his route. That's what we do. We know the route. He sees me, I see him, he goes, what the hell are you doing? Don't you know you can get in trouble for that? I'm like, what do I know? Tell him the story. I told him I'm looking for a letter. He, of course, enables me. He says, though, what? Just talk to your parents. I'm like, no, not happening. All right, he enables me, and he says, I'll call you. A few days go by. I get the call. Ring, ring, ring. Got your mail. Come find me on my route. About 2 o'clock over here. All right. Freaking blizzard. I'm going to go get this letter from the mailman that I don't know what I'm going to do with it once I get it. So I go get it. I did get it. I went back home. Again, I don't know what I'm going to do. What am I going to do with the letter? So I'll call my friend Cindy. Her dad's a lawyer. Perfect. I call her. Come over. I talk to him. He goes, talk to your parents. Like, what is it with these people? Talk to your parents. I don't want to talk to my parents, especially my dad, right? All I can hear is, what a disappointment. What the hell are you doing? What's wrong with you? Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I went back home. All right, so I went back home. I waited. What am I going to do? All right, I'll make the call. All right. I made the call to my brother. Next best thing, call your brother. Call my brother, and he says, what? What are you doing? He goes, you know what? I'm in the middle of something. Let me call you back. I'm like, nice brother you are. I'm telling him my story. I'm like all upset. Don't tell, mom and dad don't know. I'm not going to tell them. He goes, I'm in the middle. Let me call you back. I'm like, all right. So I wait. And I wait. I'm waiting. You know what that feels like? That sucks. It's just like, this big, long wait. It was only about 5 minutes. phone rings on the other line. And on the other end of that phone was a voice that I didn't recognize. It was sounding something like this. So, I hear you got into a little bit of trouble. I was like, yeah. He goes, why don't you tell me about it? This voice was like loving and kind and supportive and comforting. And who is this dude? Only for that short period of time was my father. Brings tears to my eyes right now, yeah. He was there for me when I really needed him the most. It was only for a short time, but that was good. I'll take it. Because most of the time, it wasn't so good. But I knew down inside of this man, there was some good in him. The alcoholism took it away. But I really thanked him for that. He was there for me, so yay.